What if you took the adults from Cobra Kai and compared them to Star Trek characters? What would happen? Hey Trekkies, welcome back to another Yelling About Star Trek video. My name is Christian Fox, and this is the channel where I yell at you about all things Star Trek for your amusement. Today, I want to take a look at the adult characters from Cobra Kai and see what Star Trek characters they are most like. While Cobra Kai really has nothing to do with Star Trek, I couldn't help but notice some parallels between characters of both franchises. The first character we have to talk about is Mr. Miyagi. And Mr. Miyagi, of course, is the iconic character from the first three films. And while he doesn't appear at all in Cobra Kai, the reason I have him on this list is because he is so fundamental to everything that happens. And both Daniel and Samantha talk about Mr. Miyagi a lot in the series and reflect upon his teachings. And when I look at Mr. Miyagi, he is a wise character. He is a character that people go to when they need advice. He's actually the moral center of the series. And to me, there is one really obvious character who is the Mr. Miyagi of the Star Trek universe, and that is Captain Picard. Captain Jean-Luc Picard is perhaps the most moral and ethical character in the series. Of course, everybody in Star Trek that is part of Starfleet, for the most part, is very moral and ethical. That's what you'd expect. But Picard, for me, is the most, and he's also the wisest person to me, and the person that I would most likely turn to for advice. And next we have Daniel Larusso, who is the lead of the series. And when I look at Daniel, the Star Trek character that comes to mind is Captain Archer. And I say Captain Archer because both characters are incredibly strong leaders, both have hearts and gold, and both have the intent to do good and to make the world and the galaxy a better place. While both characters have really good intents, these intentions cause a lot of the problems in the series. In the case of Cobra Kai, when Daniel sees that Johnny Lawrence has opened up a Cobra Kai dojo, he is like, all right, I got to open up Miyagi-Do. I got to prevent this from spreading because the children cannot be corrupted by Cobra Kai like it happened to me, like it happened to Johnny. It is not good for anyone. So he immediately wants to fight back. And obviously, when he opens up Miyagi-Do, that causes a lot of problems because it starts creating these rival gangs between the children. And obviously, it gives everybody the ability to use karate, which results in a lot of fights breaking out. So that is obviously the majority of the conflict in Cobra Kai, the series. And then in the case of Captain Archer, Archer will often go to a planet with the intention of meeting someone or meeting an alien species, but then he'll often see something that he doesn't find is very good. He'll see some kind of injustice and will try to interfere and then permanently change a planet, not necessarily for the better. But in both cases, they are able to make things right. Now we have to talk about the second lead in the series, and that is Johnny Lawrence. And Johnny Lawrence is a much harder character to pin down because he has so many different aspects. But when looking at Johnny, the character that I thought best fit what he was all about was Damar from Star Trek DS9. Johnny, like Damar, starts off as villains, even though I know Damar is a little bit different because when he's first introduced, he's really just a background character to respond to what Dukat is saying. And then as we get to meet him, then he becomes the villain, and then he becomes the hero. So it's not quite starting off as a villain, but I think it makes sense for this connection. In the case of Karate Kid Part 1 and a little bit of Part 2, Johnny was abused by Kreese, and in the case of Damar, Damar was abused by Wei Yun and the Dominion. And of course, both characters really do enjoy their drinks. Talking about another villain turned hero is Chosen. Chosen was the main antagonist in Part 2, but returned midway through the series as an ally. The Trek character that reminds me most of Chosen is Worf. Chosen, like Worf, values honor above all else, and you can see it in everything that he does. Both characters are incredibly strong fighters, very serious, but also very funny. I could definitely see Chosen and Worf becoming best friends, and if someone were ever to do a Worf and Chosen goes on a road trip movie, I would be down for that. Let's talk about the other and more practical half of the LaRussos, Daniel's wife, Amanda. When thinking about Amanda, Quark comes to mind. Both characters are often the voice of reason. In Cobra Kai, Amanda is always like, guys, why are we doing this? We need to call the police. We can't have these karate fights breaking out. in our home and in our schools. We just have to call the police and we have to end all this karate nonsense. Quark in Star Trek is often like, guys, what are you doing? Why are you going on this dangerous mission? We don't need to do this mission. Don't do this. This is silly. And obviously in the case of Trek, the Starfleet characters who are going on these dangerous missions really have to do what they have to do because they need to save the day and to preserve peace. But in Quark's eyes, they're kind of crazy. And you know what? He's not wrong, especially when he's talking about the mission that Worf and O'Brien and Bashir go on to honor Jadzia. It's a noble cause, but to Quark, it's like, why do this? Why risk your life for this thing? We don't even know if Jadzia wants to go to Sto-vo-kor. And not only is Amanda the voice of reason like Quark, but she also has a keen eye for business. Now, obviously, with the dealership, Daniel is the main attraction. He is the face of the dealership. He's the one that everybody sees in the commercials. He's the one who is karate chopping the prices in half and doing all that cool stuff. But it's really Amanda that keeps the business afloat when Daniel goes off and starts all of his karate stuff, especially in earlier seasons. The last of the good guys that we need to talk about is Carmen. Carmen to me reminds me so much of Deanna Troi. Obviously both characters are incredibly strong mothers, but they also seem to have the unique ability to bring out the best in other people. Carmen has been fundamental to the growth and redemption of Johnny to the point where not only is he a better teacher, but he is also a better father for Robbie and a better father for his yet to be born child. And Deanna has been crucial to people like Barclay, who she was able to help find himself, and of course crucial to Captain Picard, who she was able to help work through a lot of his trauma. Now let's shift gears and talk about the villains of the series. The first villain we have to talk about is John Kreese. And when looking at Kreese and thinking about Trek, the Trek character that reminds me most of him is that of Khan Noonien Singh. And I say this because, like Kreese, Khan is the iconic villain of the franchise. When you think about the Karate Kid franchise, the most iconic villain that comes to mind is Kreese. Obviously, Johnny Lawrence is the quote-unquote bad guy in the first part, but very quickly we realize that actually it's not Johnny who's the bad guy, it's Kreese, who is the one who is the big bad. And not only are they both iconic villains, but they're also incredibly devious. Kreese was able to rebuild Cobra Kai in the way that he wanted after Johnny tried to bring it back, and he was able to escape prison using his wits and using some very, very tasty jello. Similarly, Khan was able to lure Kirk so that he could exact revenge and, of course, escape exile on Ceti Alpha 5. Obviously, some of that is due to luck, but it doesn't take away from just how clever Khan was when he was able to get off Ceti Alpha 5 and take over the Reliant. Oh, and then there's the fact that both characters are very skilled at beating the living daylights out of people that try to cross them. The final character that we have to talk about is Terry Silver. I think that Silver is actually the strongest character in the series because of his ability to think 10 steps ahead, as we see at the end of season 4 when he's able to orchestrate Kreese's arrest, and of course his ability to charm those around him so that he can manipulate them into doing what he wants, as seen with Tori and Kenny. So when you have a character who's able to think 10 steps ahead and use their charm to manipulate those around them into doing what they want, who does that make you think of from Star Trek? That's right, none other than Gul Dukat. Dukat is arguably Star Trek's strongest villain because of everything that I said about Silver. He's able to think 10 steps ahead and use his charm to manipulate those around him into doing what he wants, as seen with his slow manipulation of Kai Wynn in the Season 7 arc of DS9. And while I'm very happy that both characters got what they deserved, I can't help but miss them a little bit because, my gosh, they're so much fun to watch. And I love villains like that that are complex, that are charming, that are able to manipulate, and that are able to give our heroes a run for their money. And in the paraphrased words of Captain Kirk, I shall see you out there, that away.